Good morning. This is Anthony with BBSN, and I'm going to do a little video blog today, or vlog, as I guess the hip way to phrase it is, and talk a little bit about the dead ball era. And I'll be talking, probably do a few of these to talk about different teams or events or players from the dead ball era, and a time period that really honestly is very fascinating to me. My favorite time period in baseball, in fact, really anything from about 1900 to early to mid 1920s. And reason being is that you look at other sports, basketball, football, hockey, the way the game is played has changed from varying degrees in all those sports. And football is an example, and in a sport that is very dear to me. I've coached high school football for 30 years, and the game from the early part of the 20th century to now is completely different. There's been scoring rules, the advent and implementation of the forward pass and the rules that have governed that. And, football has gone from a game early in the 20th century where it was basically just 22 players who never came off the field unless they got hurt, which happened frequently, in a rugby-like scrum with limited scoring, to today's game, which is obviously wide open and 40 to 50 passes a game in a lot of schemes or teams that run the spread concept. So baseball, the philosophy of the game has obviously changed since then, but the way the game is played has remained, for all intents and purposes, the same. Same rules, same, I guess, beautiful concept in that, baseball is a game, obviously, a sport with no time limits, and the game is allowed to play out at its own pace and unfold. The events unfold, unfettered by time restraints or rushing to get the 2-minute drive in, or whatever the case may be. And that's what makes baseball beautiful and unique. And the only differences, the home run obviously has become much more prolific. Training has improved, gloves and equipment has gotten better, but really, with the exception of the two differing philosophies, where now it's less station to station, less small ball, more long ball, versus the dead ball era, which was built on small ball and a lot of sacrifice bunting, playing hit and run, moving the runners around. A more cerebral type of game, I think, than currently is played. But bottom line is the fundamentals and everything that goes into the game is the same. The dead ball era, and why it attracts me, is really was a time, and I like that time in American history in general, but the game in particular, a lot of characters back then, and Rube Waddell, who I'll do a more in-depth vlog on later, is a very fascinating character. And again, I'll save the bulk of that for later, but he's a person that probably wouldn't have been able to function or wouldn't have had the opportunity to even play baseball had he been alive today, due to his, depending on who you listen to or how you look at it, his condition or his illness, which, back then made him a very unique and beloved person. And he was able to exist in society basically due to the fact that he could play baseball, and was fortunate enough to play for Connie Mack, somebody who basically took care of him for as long as he could put up with the Rube, which turned out to be basically 6 seasons. But I digress. Another often told story from that era was the 1919 Chicago White Sox, and two really very good books out on that. Obviously, the one that most people know, 8 Men Out by Elliot Asimov, has been out for a while. A movie was made of it, and it's really the definitive book of that team and that time period. And misses some of the more detailed facts, I think, but still a pretty good overview. And again, and especially with the movie, Hollywood is going to add their flair, their dramatics to any type of story like that, which they did with that book. And even the book itself, a lot of things were put in there that were either not completely or thoroughly researched, or again, kind of glossed things over, which was kind of a common theme, through most of the 20th century for sports media, where I think recently, and the book I'm talking about, the more recent book on that scandal, the book Turning the Black Sox White, went into a lot more detailed fact finding, and the other thing too is it's easier probably to access archives online now, whereas Elliot Asimov did a lot more probably pouring through microfiche at libraries and that type of thing. So both books are good, and really Turning the Black Sox White almost tends to shift a lot of the blame for that series to Charlie Comiskey. And obviously he had a part in it, but I don't know that he, he's the villain that is sometimes portrayed in that book. And even in the movie where Cicotte goes in to talk about his bonus, and I think the bonus was to win 30 games, and Cicotte said if he had won those games, or been able to pitch, he would have reached his bonus. And Comiskey, well, you didn't win 30 games, did you, etc. And I haven't seen the movie in a while. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically how it goes. And that necessarily was not necessarily the case. Cicotte had actually asked for time off that season, and of his own volition, and he was suffering from a sore arm due to overwork, and that happened even in 1918. In 1917, probably his best season. Well, 1917 and 1919 were his best seasons in the majors, both very good seasons. The Sox won the World Championship in 1917, and Cicotte was awarded a raise based on his performance that season. In 1918, he came back and was injured, and did not pitch effectively, lost 19 games, which was tied for the most in the majors that year. And as a result, Comiskey did not see fit to give him a raise for the 1919 season. Which is, at the time, the way the game was played, that's how the business was. You couldn't sign a 7-year, $25 million contract that escalated payouts each year and have a terrible season and still come back and get your raise the next year. Just a different time because of the reserve clause. So Cicotte came back and had a good 1919, obviously 29-7. Instrumental in getting the Sox back to the World Series, and a lot of what led up to him taking that $10,000 had to do with his family situation, and not trying to make excuses for Cicotte. You make a choice, and he made the choice. That money was placed under his pillow. He was one of the few players that received any money out of the deal, and he made the decision to accept it. And he indicated later on that after that first game he had trouble sleeping, was sick about that, and determined not to let that happen again. But at the same time, he made no effort to return the money, made no effort to distribute the money to other players who hadn't gotten anything. He kept all 10,000, and kind of contradicts his effort in game. In the second game he pitched in that series, kind of contradicts what he says. Not so much in the fact that he pitched very well in that game, well enough to win, but the fact that the 2 Reds runs and the 2-0 Cincinnati victory in that game were basically both attributed to his errors, and one, which was a cutoff play that he muffed, was almost unexplainable. So he can back up what he says by the way he pitched in the second outing of that series, but those 2 particular plays are very suspicious, especially in a tight game. and did just enough to lead to the Sox losing. And had the Sox somehow rallied to beat Cincinnati in that game, he probably still could have justified to the gamblers, if he had gotten any heat, hey, I'm trying to do my part, I made these errors, etc. So, that's something you can debate, and it's really up to what you want to believe. And again, I'm trying to give Cicotte the benefit of the doubt. His third start of the series, after the Sox rallied behind Dickie Kerr, was definitely an honest effort. He came out, and in different stories it says Cicotte sore because the gamblers had double-crossed him, came out and pitched his game in Game 3. Well, he didn't get double-crossed. He got his money. If he was doing that for his teammates, that's fine. I think a more appropriate story there would be his teammates, sore at being double-crossed, decided they were going to play to win, and out of obligation to them over the gamblers, Cicotte, despite the fact that he had gotten paid, decided to go along with his teammates and put forth his best effort, which was a finely pitched game. And regardless of how he performed in the series, it's fairly well accepted, or was talked about at the time, that even going into the series, Cicotte was not expected to be his best because he had been overused. That was one of the reasons he asked for time off toward the end of the season, as well as some personal things he had to take care of. And his arm was basically on the verge of going dead at that point due to the amount of innings he had pitched that year. So that factors into it too. I mean, facts are facts. The arm, you could speculate, and he did pitch well enough in his second, third starts of the series to win both games. He won one, lost one of his own volition, as we've talked about. But, you can make a case, again, weighing the facts against what's speculated in terms of his arm strength. What really is, and again, not making excuses for him, but lends credence to why he took the money. And by all accounts, he was very remorseful the next season and really throughout the rest of his life for what he had been involved in. But the situation with Cicotte on a personal level, his family was really struggling. He was basically the head of the household for 12 people. He had his own family, he had his wife's parents, his brother-in-law and his wife, who were not able to bring any income in. So he really was responsible for this, the only breadwinner for this 12-person family. And baseball players were paid well compared to the rest of society back then, but it still wasn't the astronomical gap it is today. If you're talking a 2,000-3,000 for some of the better paid players over versus what you could make in a year-round normal job. And that still, I think, added a lot of weight to Cicotte's shoulders. And there's no doubt he was obligated to taking care of his family. And there is a bee right here. I'm allergic to bees, so hopefully he goes. Unwelcome visitor to the chat. But that was the motivating factor in him even taking the bribe. If he hadn't had those extenuating circumstances, I don't think he would even have participated in the fix, quite honestly. And again, I'm speculating. Who knows? Maybe he would have. But he took that money, and he had purchased a large farm to accommodate all these people that he was tasked with taking care of, and had a $4,000 mortgage, which I would die for. I'd have my house paid off in a month now, but back then that was a pretty good chunk of change, and he needed help to sustain that, which is what he used the money for. And after baseball, he kicked around in some outlaw leagues with a few of the other co-conspirators, but after baseball he remained on that farm and I believe raised strawberries, and He indicated himself he often answered letters from people and even kids who wrote him and asked him about that series, and acknowledged he'd made mistakes, and explained in some cases why he had done it, and again, by all accounts, was very remorseful for participating in that. So, there's a degree of sympathy that goes towards Cicotte, and then a degree of, well, you still did something wrong. But my point of that is, I had gone on Strat-o-matic this morning to order the 2017 card set, and as I was perusing through the individual team sets, two things. Came across these White Sox and thought, for my next time machine project, it might be cool to, if not for the whole team, maybe give Cicotte a chance for redemption and place him in the 2017 White Sox rotation and do an Eddie Cicotte replay with him time traveling to last season to again try and redeem himself pitching for his final team in the majors, the White Sox. So that's something that's definitely going to happen as I work through the St. Louis Browns project. And speaking of which, I'll just use that to segue right into unexpected find. I did not realize that they had actually made a team set for the Browns, the 1922 Browns, in with advanced and super advanced sides, so they have the splits. So I was very happy to come across that, so I ordered the 1922 Browns with the super advanced side, and once they get here, I got 3-day shipping, so they should be here probably Monday or Tuesday, I would imagine. So once I get those, I'll replace the basic set and start playing the Browns Time Machine project on advanced / super advanced. And what I mean by that, I haven't 100% committed to going super advanced full time. A couple of things bother me about super advanced, and I know once you get the hang of it, it's probably easy. I don't like rolling the 1-die-20 before every pitch when there's a runner on base. I'll be honest about that. I kind of thought of different ways to incorporate pitcher wildness, but until I do, probably the best way to play is just stay with super advanced or regular advanced fielding. And I know some people have said the errors get a little bit out of control in advanced. I'll monitor that and make house rules if I have to keep that at a reasonable level. But that's where I will go. Other super advanced things I do use, I love the ballpark factors, so I will use the ballpark factors and incorporate that into the replay. And also I use the majority of the super advanced stealing rules. I don't automatically apply the -2 or whatever. I don't ever hold runners on second, third, because realistically that just doesn't happen a lot. In the modern game, you have your pickoff plays, but you don't have a shortstop or second baseman, outside of occasionally creeping behind the runner just to keep him honest. You don't have them standing there and holding a runner on second base. So that piece will not be incorporated. What I will do is just use the pitcher and catcher's hold ratings to simulate that when I'm stealing bases. And you can hear Duke and Daisy, they hear talk about Strat-o-matic, and they have to pipe in, which they're doing. So I use that, and then I have a house rule for holding runners. If it's a 4-run or less deficit either way, I will hold the runner. If it's not, I will not. So that's kind of how I'll play that. So it's a hodgepodge of super advanced and advanced, and hopefully it will be easy to follow along. It's what works for me, and that's what I love about Strat. You can tailor the rules to fit the way you play. So that will be upcoming once I get the team set, and then after I get through the Browns project, we'll look to work Eddie Cicotte into a time machine replay. And again, haven't decided yet if it's just him, and I'll have him start 35, 36 games for the 2017 Sox. Probably would be better to do it that way rather than doing the entire team and doing that as a redemption. So it's probably how that'll end up. With the Browns too, I'm not going to be recording every single game now. I'll play a few out offline and you know, then record 2 or 3 just to get through that a little bit quicker. And reason being, I have the 1969 payoff pitch replay going on with the Cubs as well, and on that one I am playing out every single game plus a few bonus games that have been requested. For example, today's I'll probably broadcast live a little bit later, the Expos and Phils to replay Bill Stoneman's no-hitter from that season on the date of April 17th, 69, at the request of Joe S., who is a friend of the channel. So, you know, there'll be games like that thrown in. I think I've got a Red Sox game slotted to go on for 1869, and also a Red Sox or Orioles Senators matchup at some point as well. So I do have, I think there's 3 or 4 request games that I have in queue on that. But again, playing out every game for the Cubbies, so want to make sure I'm not doing too much with multiple projects, because the payoff pitch is going to take, you know, it's going to take well into the season to complete. But again, having fun with that, and appreciate everyone comments, liking, subscribing, and following along. So that's my vlog for today on Eddie Cicotte mostly, and a little bit on his story and how we can incorporate him into a Strat time machine replay. So until next time, again, thanks for watching, and keep rolling for the fences. See ya.